Another edition of the Heels of the Face podcast. Brandon, I'm going to give you this number and give you through the break to tell me what it means. $54.99. As well as this week, we're going to talk about some things that were said over in AEW that are about WWE. We were talking Tony Khan's comments. We're talking Chris Jericho's comments. That and much, much more as the Heels of the Face podcast starts right now.
So silence your cell phones. Hold your applause. And tune into the truth.
Oh, you didn't know? Your ass better call somebody.
Getting beat up by 9 guys in Syracuse, to me, there's not a whole lot of shame in.
From the 315 to the world, this is the Heel to Face podcast.
The cream of the crop! Wow, man, freaked out!
Follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Heel to the Face.
I said, are you ready?
From Armory Square in downtown Syracuse, New York, let's send it now to Brandon and Jared.
Bad luck seems to be my middle name. They might as well tag me up with my buddies from Syracuse.
So another edition of the Heel to Face podcast is on the air. I am Jared. You can find me on social media at K-Rock Jared. You can find my partner, as always, on Twitter, not Instagram, at Icebreaker21, and the program on Twitter at Heel to the Face. So another edition of Heel to the Face coming off Payback, heading into All Out. And before our little intro, I told Brandon $54.99. What does that mean?
Probably the cost of AEW's All Out this weekend.
Incorrect. That might actually be a reasonable cost. They always say go into your parents' house or your grandparents' house, you get to see some relics of the past. Well, going to my parents' house last week, I got to see a relic of the past. Traditional cable television. And one of those relics saw a preview for Payback. And yes, it was offered on traditional pay-per-view television at the low cost on DirecTV of $54.99. So we talked about this last week. Without the network, people would probably be pretty pissed that a pay-per-view is coming. But little did I know that some people out there are there, and there's got to be some of them out there that are still making the purchases of the pay-per-views at traditional cost. And Payback cost $54.99. I don't know if SummerSlam was also that cost. It must have been at least that cost. So you're looking at $110 for 7 days of pay-per-view from WWE. And doing some research, and it was actually pretty hard to find because buy rates in the pay-per-view world were such a big deal before the WWE Network and every wrestling website posted them. They kind of all fallen off, and not a lot of wrestling websites still post the buy rate. So doing some research, I couldn't find the buy rates for Payback itself, but I found some buy rates for pay-per-views in the 2019 year. And the average pay-per-view draws about 15,000 to 20,000 buy rate. Now, I don't know. I guess that must be America, right, too? That's not talking outside the United States. That must be America because the pay-per-view buy rates are normally just calculated, at least that wise, in United States. So I would say that's actually kind of a low number if it's not counting America because obviously there's probably places out there that don't have the WWE Network. But that's a very high number if you're talking in the United States or North America because there isn't really anywhere in North America that I know that doesn't offer the WWE Network.
Yeah, that is so odd that people are even still buying it on the old traditional cable. I didn't even know that thing still existed. I mean, why would
the prices too? $54.99.
Pay $9.99. You get the pay-per-view. You get all the different programs. You can go back and watch some of the old storylines from maybe when you really enjoyed wrestling. Which sometimes I'll go back, and we've talked about it before, and going back and watching some Attitude Era matches, or for the heck of it, because I was a WWF guy back in the 90s, I go back sometimes and watch some old Nitros or some old pay-per-views. For example, I had to go back and watch Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio at Halloween Havoc 97, I believe it was. Great match. So, I mean, every once in a while there's matches that kind of pique my interest, and I'm like, you know what? I want to watch some of this pay-per-view, so it's just so funny that you could do all of that for $9.99, but you're going to pay almost $50 more just for the show. I mean, who really does that anymore? I mean, especially with streaming services out there. I mean, the only people I really know that have cable are my parents, and it sounds like your parents. Probably the older generation has it. I'm going to tell you in the next 15, 20 years, nobody's going to have cable. Let's be honest. It's going to be all streaming services. You watch stuff on streaming services. I watch stuff on streaming services. I've been doing it for years. Once I moved out of my parents' house, I've had streaming stuff in my house. So $54.99, who the hell buys that?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. So I did see that the lowest buy rate in WWE history actually came last year at Stomping Ground when they sold about 9,000 pay-per-views, which obviously everything since 2014 has been the lowest buy rates in history because I don't think they've drawn under 90,000 buy rates prior to the WWE Network. I think the lowest bought pay-per-view ever was that December to Dismember, which was like 90,000 buy rates. But then, since the WWE Network, I mean, we're talking before and after the network, things are completely different. But I'll actually say kind of impressive. WrestleMania 35 last year drew 100,000 buy rates. Now, that would be a typical that would be a low-level pay-per-view back in the pay-per-view generation. I want to say like a Great American Bash back in the day in like 2009 or something drew about 150,000 buy rates. So to think that only 50,000 less, or actually more people that ECW's December to Dismember bought WrestleMania, while taking into account that people like myself and yourself out there didn't even really know that you could even still buy it on pay-per-view. So if you talk about how Vince is making some money here and there, well, here's some ways that he's making money that we completely forget about, because he's selling a ECW Dismember to Dismember quote of buy rates for WrestleMania on top of the fact that we don't even know it exists. So that shows you how low ECW was, the fact that it was an actual pay-per-view before the network and still drew less than WrestleMania did when we didn't even know pay-per-view was still a thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's the interesting thing, and something to kind of point out. Do we know the numbers on AEW's buy rates? I mean, can they be that high?
AEW's buy rate for their Double or Nothing, which was their first pay-per-view, was 98,000 buys, which is still a little bit less than WrestleMania when most people were watching it via the network. So that shows you that if they were going pay-per-view to pay-per-view to this day, WWE would be outdrawing AEW when it comes to pay-per-view. 98,000, I mean, it's not horrible for a startup company, especially a company that had their very first pay-per-view. Nobody even knew about them.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, that shows you that WWE, obviously WrestleMania is an anomaly. I feel like and it could be, maybe bars and restaurants are buying these pay-per-views without the idea of knowing that the network exists, or without trying to do subscriptions, or not having, I guess, the legal rights. Maybe some of these places maybe don't have the right to buy the network and then play it that way. They got to still do it the traditional way. I know like a Buffalo Wild Wings plays all the UFC fights. I don't think they do it via streaming services. I think they got to still do it the traditional way because they're not hooked up to the internet on the televisions. They don't have Fire Sticks in their TVs. They've got the traditional direct TV. So it could be a lot of maybe restaurants and places buying WrestleMania. I mean, obviously the numbers are much different compared to another pay-per-view. We're talking, I said, 9 to 20,000 for a traditional pay-per-view, but still not bad. That's still free money, because WWE is kind of even telling people not to buy it. That's how you know it's free money, because they spend all their time telling people don't pay for it on pay-per-view. They've actually even said it. I think Michael Cole one time before WrestleMania, I want to say last year, said $60 is the price of WrestleMania on pay-per-view. Don't pay that. Pay $9.99. Buy WrestleMania via the WWE Network. Or that still was a time when if you were a new subscriber, it was absolutely free.
Exactly. I was just going to say. Or you could get it, or you can literally subscribe for the trial and watch the pay-per-view for nothing, and then go on with your life and not have to drop any more money. That's so funny that people still do that. I mean, I could see little bars and restaurants doing it because they can charge maybe an admission fee and still make money. So I could see that, but besides that, what person's actually going to do that at this point? That to me just boggles my mind.
I mean, maybe there are places out there that do. I mean, they're obviously not watching our podcast because we go out via the internet like most people. But there are maybe some places out there that still, maybe you got cable television, but you don't have high streaming internet service. I mean, I know there are not a lot of places, but there are some desolate areas of the country that are still only on the dial-up services, or just either way not on the high-speed internet or no internet at all. I can't imagine that. I mean, that's got to be a hard life, though. If you're living in one of the areas without good internet and being a young wrestling fan, you figure maybe now it's time to move. I mean, you must really love living on that ranch out in Idaho,
Yeah, right. I mean, that's still surprising me even to this day that folks don't really have good internet. I mean, I guess I'm just spoiled because of where we live. I mean, especially myself, because I know you live in the city, and they don't have Verizon Fios, for example, and Fios internet's really good, and I'm able to get Fios out just outside of Syracuse. So, I mean, I'm spoiled as a fan of the internet. I mean, we have good. I think we both have good internet. What you have in the city and what I have on the outskirts of the city.
Yeah, so speaking of Vince McMahon making some money and having total control over things, we're filming this on a Friday, and typically we do it on a Thursday. So on Friday, only about 2 or 3 hours ago, some news came out that Vince McMahon is not happy with a bunch of his superstars performing on third-party sites like Twitch, and I guess one called Cameo, which I wasn't aware of, in which they're using their real names. We're talking Braun Strowman as Adam Shear. We're talking, Alexa Bliss as Lexi Kaufman, so on and so forth. These people using their real names on these Twitch accounts and or other third-party sites, in which WWE, more importantly Vince McMahon, has sent a letter out to the staff and the superstars saying, you have 30 days to cease and desist this, or there's going to be some suspensions and fines coming your way, because he deals with this. He feels that this is detrimental to the WWE image. What is your opinion on this, Brandon? It's probably the same as mine.
Yeah, I think it's a little ridiculous. I think Vince is overstepping his boundaries. I was doing some thinking while you were just talking about Cameo. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Cameo is like you can pay somebody to like do a Skype thing and say happy birthday to your dad or somebody. Like if you're someone from the older generation, you can have Tom Selleck, sing happy birthday to to your dad or somebody. So that's what Cameo is. So people get paid to do that. Gilbert Gottfried, I believe, I was just thinking about that. Gilbert Gottfried actually he makes enough money just doing the cameos where he doesn't have to do anything else if he really chose to. So that's what Cameo is. We all know what Twitch is for the gaming world. To me, if they're using their birth names, what's on their social security, information, who cares? It's not like Adam Shear, aka Braun Strowman, is going on Twitch and saying, I'm Braun Strowman. He's not doing that. It's his real freaking name. To me, it's Vince overstepping his boundaries. And you know what? There's going to be people that are just going to say, screw you, Vince. Suspend me then.
There expects to be some repercussions, I guess, or at least some pushback from WWE superstars who are going to argue the fact that they are always pushed out as independent contractors. And that is one thing. Vince is really dumb in this perspective, in my eyes, because he's only going to get no negativity out of this. If he kept this, if he just said whatever, let him do it, it hasn't really hurt the company, in my eyes or in other people's eyes, no harm, no foul. But here's the problem. People are going to obviously now be pushing harder at that independent contractor status that they are even further than before. I mean, you already had all these wrestlers and superstars and John Oliver on HBO pushing back and saying either these guys are employees and you're going to give them health care, or they're independent contractors and you're going to let them do what they want. You can't have both. So by Vince McMahon kind of going out of his way to say this looks bad on his part, because these wrestlers are going to say, fine, you want me to stop doing this? You got 30 days to offer me health care.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. And by the way, I don't really care for John Oliver. I think he's a piece of crap anyways, but that's another point for another day. But yeah, the whole point is, yes, if you're an independent contractor, you can do whatever the hell you want. I mean, people have regular jobs that are independent contractors, and they kind of come and go as they please. They do what they want. They work for other companies, and and they're considered on the tax terms a 1099. So they don't get like a paycheck every week, and they're not getting health insurance. So if you're gonna put things under that umbrella and say, no, you can't do this, you can't do that, then guess what? Sweeten the deal. Throw me some benefits, because yes, the money's good in WWE. We do know that. But if you look at the lower level talents, they really don't make that much money. They don't make much more than the average Joe, and they're working 300 days a year. Well, typically, except for this, during the pandemic, but for the most part, 300 days a year, and they're making, a little bit more than maybe the average Joe, so to speak, and who works, maybe a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday kind of deal. So, for me, Vince needs to calm down. He needs to let people, do what they do. Like, some people want to make money outside of WWE. Like, who cares? Like, that's why WWE, if they keep up where they're going, people are going to go to AEW because AEW is offering similar money or even more money, and you have your freedom to go do other shows. And look, for example, like the Young Bucks have their YouTube show. Any of these superstars that are, in the business, they have their own stuff going on outside the business. So WWE is really they're gonna look back at this, 10 years from now. It could be a really bad thing because people are just not gonna be happy about it.
Have all these alternatives like you do right now. I feel like people should, Triple H, Stephanie, maybe they should be coming to Vince and being like, hey, Dad, did you forget that there's AEW, there's Impact Wrestling, there's these other places for these guys to go? They're already kind of tempted to go there for reasons prior to your mentioning of what you're doing on Twitch. They already got John Moxley. They already got Brody Lee. Don't give them any more ammunition to leave WWE than they already have.
It makes zero sense at all. And you know what's going to happen if they keep up their act? WWE is going to they're going to fall by the wayside. I mean, at the end of the day, Vince, I hate to say this, but Vince is almost 80 years old. Go retire. Go sit on a nice beach, enjoy all the billions that you've made over the years as a big promoter, and just get out of, let Triple H and the quote unquote kids run the business. Because if you know how NXT's done under Triple H's helm, what do you think's going to happen if Triple H takes over Raw and SmackDown? It's going to be really good things. And I think if you throw Shane McMahon, you throw Stephanie in there, good. I think it's good for business. I think Vince needs to retire. As much as I respect what he's done for the business, I obviously always tip my cap to him. Like, when you go to the arena and Vince shows up, I'm one of those knuckleheads bowing, because he's done so much for the business. But at the same time, you got to know when your time is up with keeping the hands-on part of your business. Step away. You can still collect a fat check. You just got to write yourself off somewhere. You're the boss. You know what you can do. You still collect the check because you're still gonna want to live live a nice life. But dude, just let the kids run it. You've been building those kids up for years and years to do this. They're they're in their 40s and 50s respectively, and Triple H I know is in his 50s as well. These guys and girls have been doing it for so long. So why are we not just letting those guys do it? Just let them do it.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And moving on to people who they say are free agents and moving on to AEW, there's some rumors, and Chris Jericho was kind of talking about them this week, and I think they're kind of bogus. But hey, Brock Lesnar is a free agent, and there's been some people talking about what if Brock Lesnar went to AEW? Could Brock Lesnar go to AEW? Chris Jericho, I think this week, one of the smartest guys in wrestling. First off, Chris Jericho had only intelligent things to say. Even though he's not working for WWE, he said something great about the Thunderdome, said, hey, WWE, good for them having that Thunderdome, makes sense, it's smart, looks good. Yeah, obviously, even if you're working in AEW and you look over at WWE, you can't deny that, yeah, that's for WWE, that's pretty good. And, you're not going to stupid and say, oh, that's dumb. If you say it's dumb, it just kind of comes off as jealousy. You know what I mean? So Chris Jericho,
or it makes you look dumb.
Yeah. So Chris Jericho comes out and says, that looks pretty good. And as for Brock Lesnar, Chris Jericho was pretty smart in saying, let's be real. This is Brock Lesnar here. This isn't Brody Lee. This isn't John Moxley. And that even though Brock Lesnar is a free agent, here's what I believe and here's what Chris Jericho believes, and it's the same thing, is that he's only a free agent because there's nothing for him to do. We're not going to pay Brock Lesnar to do anything when there's nothing for him to do. There's no reason for him to show up at SummerSlam. It's not going to draw up ticket sales. There are no ticket sales. It's not going to really draw up buy rates. There are no buy rates. It's the WWE network. It's not going to really draw up much press in the community. You're not going to be able to do interviews on the local news or any sort of fan fest or meet and greets with Brock Lesnar that cost money because you can't. It's literally just the same as a television show. If anything, there's more eyes on Monday Night Raw than there are on pay-per-views, just because they're on television versus the network. But with that being said, Jericho was smart in saying that AEW probably doesn't have – it's not just that they don't have the money, because they kind of might have the money to bring in a Brock Lesnar. But the issue is, would it be worth bang for their buck? See, WWE can spend the money on a Brock Lesnar, it's not much loss for them. They're a big time organization. They're big. They bring in celebrities and do stupid stuff all the time. And if it doesn't give them that much of a boost, that's fine. But AEW would need to see bang for their buck if they're going to pay someone like Brock Lesnar the money they're going to pay him. And more importantly, for my eyes, Chris Jericho didn't say this, but bringing in Brock Lesnar would be horrible for AEW, because what is AEW? It's all these indie darlings out there who think that they can make an organization on their own. If you bring in Brock Lesnar, Tony Khan specifically, what are you saying to these guys when you pay him $10 million and you pay Kenny Omega $750,000 for the same amount of work, or you pay Brock Lesnar $10 million and you pay Jon Moxley $1.2 million? You're creating a WWE scenario. That's what AEW is. It's the anti-WWE. It makes no sense to bring in Brock Lesnar. That's the whole reason of AEW.
Here's the thing, though, too. And Brock Lesnar he's never going to leave WWE for any promotion. It's just not going to happen.
He's like Undertaker. Yeah.
Exactly. He's technically, even though he's a free agent, he's technically under contract. You know what I mean? Like, here's the thing. If Vince calls him and says, hey, I need you for this date and date, then all Brock has to say is, okay, I need this much money. And guess what? Vince says, okay, I'll write you the check. And then guess what? Brock Lesnar's on the show. That's just how it goes. And Vince McMahon and Brock have an understanding, which Brock, the only way he would ever do anything that's not WWE is if he actually went back to the UFC, where I already saw it. Bones Jones is already calling him on anyways, which, let's just be honest, Bones Jones would wreck him. We don't need to go into UFC too much, but Brock Lesnar would get destroyed by Bones Jones. But that's the only thing I would ever see him doing that's not WWE. If it's wrestling, he's not going anywhere else. He's unofficially on the roster, if you think about it. And it would, again, I agree with you. It would be a terrible thing to do with AEW because, like you said, indie darlings don't need Brock Lesnar. Indie darlings have made AEW how great it's been, and the ratings show it. The passion for the fans. I mean, obviously you can't see them in the arena now, but when they were there, they were passionate. It's a very passionate crowd. You don't need Brock Lesnar to put you over the hump. You're already doing what you're supposed to do. And here's the thing. That's the thing with Brock Lesnar is there are some AEW fans that would say, you know what? You bring Brock Lesnar, then I'm just going to go back to watching Ring of Honor. Then I'm not going to sit here and watch WWE 2.0,
Yeah, and I feel like the AEW, the big thing is that they're run by the wrestlers. They have a lot more say. They've got a lot more involvement. So if you ask these guys, hey, you want me to bring in Brock Lesnar and then push the Young Bucks to the pre-show so we can bring in Brock Lesnar for a 5-minute match in the main card, even though he's not putting in any of the weekly television time? And or you think that we should all take half of our paychecks to give him for 10 minutes of time? They would probably say, get out of here. I came here because you're going to let me be an integral part. You're going to let me be more involved. You're going to let us be the ones who run the show. That's why we left the WWEs to come to the AEWs. So it makes no sense for them to bring in Brock Lesnar anyway, whether it be bang for their buck, because they're not going to bring in, as we were talking earlier about the AEW buy rates of 98,000. I mean, WrestleMania prior to the network was doing buy rates of 1.2 million. And SummerSlams are doing around 400,000 and sometimes even 500,000 to 600,000. So with that being said, AEW probably wouldn't see bang for their buck bringing in Brock Lesnar. It wouldn't make him enough money. It wouldn't make the other guy. It would just piss the locker room off. That's all it would do.
Well, here's the thing. It would piss the locker room off. And honestly, because of where the buy rates are, you're probably going to lose money on the deal. I mean, you have the TV money. I understand that. And there's been talks and rumors that they're going to have a second show. I mean, I think right now they should stick to one show. I think they're doing fine as one show. A lot of people would argue that maybe they need more airtime for the female wrestlers because the female wrestlers in AEW are doing a great job. There's some NWA talent going over there. They're doing a great job. But the problem is, I think because of where their niche, I think 2 nights would just kind of water down the product. I think one night is perfect. And speaking of, one night, I think so NXT and AEW, I like NXT on Tuesdays, and I really do like, leaving Dynamite on Wednesdays, because then you're not making wrestling fans decide, okay, what am I going to watch tonight? You'll have wrestling fans will be good all week. They'll have essentially all week. You'll have Monday Night Raw, Tuesday night, the Tuesday night NXT, Wednesday night, you'll have your Dynamite, Thursday's an off day, Friday night SmackDown, and then you're gonna sometimes you'll have a Saturday pay-per-view and a Sunday pay-per-view. So you're getting the only really off day you're gonna get is Thursday, which I think for a wrestling fan, if you're a diehard like we are, that's great because I have a hard time watching both because it's like I want to watch the whole show of one and then watch the whole show of the other, not flip back and forth because I want to see the whole thing in one shot so I can, from a, I like to look at it that way where I don't just pick out certain matches and say, yeah, that was a good match, that was a good match. I want to see the whole show in one shot and say, okay, that whole show was better than that whole show. That's just me.
Yeah, so NXT is looking at the fact that this past week they were NXT Super Tuesday when they had the four-way hour-long Iron Man match, and this upcoming Tuesday it'll be NXT again on Tuesday night when Adam Cole takes on Finn Balor. Neither of our picks ended up in the result here. You had Gargano, I had Ciampa. At the end, they were third and fourth place finishers in this Iron Man match, which is this Tuesday going to hopefully once and for all decide the NXT Championship after they ended in a tie. There were rumors before I read it was going to end in a tie and move on. So I wasn't too surprised there. I guess I was a little surprised with the participants in whom the tie occurred. I thought maybe it would be Gargano or Ciampa and probably not have Adam Cole in the finish. But here we go. Two guys who actually wasn't expecting finishing up with a tie. I think it was, 2 falls apiece heading into Tuesday. And they're going to look at this strongly and whether they should move to Tuesday nights. Obviously, people over in AEW have said, yeah, Chris Jericho for one, that NXT should concede to Tuesday nights. But to be honest with you, we were just talking about Vince McMahon and how, he's somebody who just is so stubborn. I feel like in one aspect, he's going to not want to go to Tuesday nights, even if it means more views for him on Tuesdays. He might still want to go to Wednesdays just because he doesn't want AEW to win, an extra viewer here or there. He doesn't want to feel like WWE conceded to AEW. So it might be tough for him there. Tony Khan this past week has said WrestleMania was blown out of the water by AEW's Double or Nothing pay-per-view that they did this year. I have to agree with that, but at the same time, it goes the Vince McMahon route now with Tony Khan, and Tony Khan's been doing a few of these things where he's talking about things with WWE, and I think Chris Jericho even did as well, where you're just putting WWE in your mouth when, what are you doing? Tony Khan, listen, I agree with you. A Double or Nothing beat WrestleMania because you were shooting a fish in a barrel. That's what, you didn't beat I would say that that's something worth saying because it is a real accomplishment in a normal year. But coming out and saying that this year is more or less like, what are you doing? Like, why are you even talking about WWE? Like saying you beat WWE in your house 3 or something like that is really just giving them more publicity. Yeah. And again, you're like that junior product. If you're judging your product based off of how you compete against WWE, even if it's like the worst pay-per-view of all time, you're still like, I think we beat that worst pay-per-view of all time. Like, why would you even be comparing yourself to that?
Yeah, to me it makes zero sense. We know that pay-per-view beat WrestleMania. I mean, I think anybody with a set of eyeballs can tell you what they watched and what they saw, and I think we all agree. So why say it? You're actually just like you said, you're actually giving WWE more of a little oomph on social media. You're getting the words out of your mouth. Guess what? Vince is like, thank you. That's free publicity. Thank you very much. You're gonna make me more money. If you want to cost me money, shut up and don't talk about my brand. Don't talk about my stuff. But you know what? Vince is sitting back like, you can keep talking all you want because guess what? You're making me money. So thank you for doing that. I will say this. AEW has been the better product, especially during this pandemic. But I think with the Thunderdome, I've come around on it. I wasn't saying I'm anti-Thunderdome. I just want fans back. But I've turned for the Thunderdome. I do like the Thunderdome. I think it's a good alternative to obviously having physical fans in the audience. I think they're doing it right. You actually can hear the audience. You can hear the crowd in the background on their computers. That's cool. AEW, I don't think they're going to do the Thunderdome thing. I think they're just going to keep doing what they're doing. Because before you know it, the pandemic's going to be under control. And we'll be going to AEW, hopefully in Rochester soon enough. And then, we'll get things back to normal.
Well, speaking of the pandemic, there have been some rumblings and some rumors that I have heard, and people have said in good faith, Vince McMahon owes Tampa this, that, and the other thing. Well, thanks to somebody who brought it to my attention on Twitter today, because I would have not even known. I didn't even read it on any wrestling websites. But next year, WrestleMania 37, scheduled to still be in Los Angeles. The schedule for WWE that has been unchanged has said the Hall of Fame will be on the 20th. Let's see, WrestleMania is the 28th, NXT is on the 27th, and then the Hall of Fame is on the 25th at the LA Convention Center. But on the 26th, Friday night, at the Staples Center, WWE SmackDown. Well, checking the Staples Center calendar and Ticketmaster shows that the Staples Center is actually running a concert that night. It is a Spanish group, and it is not just a tentative thing they put on their calendar. It is being sold currently. Tickets are being sold. In fact, I believe half the Staples Center, half the allotted tickets, have already been sold for this concert at the Staples Center the same night that WWE is still advertising that SmackDown, the go-home SmackDown before WrestleMania, is going to happen at Staples Center 2 nights before WrestleMania. Now, obviously, there have been some rumblings and rumors otherwise that WWE has been in talks about maybe moving WrestleMania to Tampa next year, just because California seems to be a more stricter state and having things a little less under control. Obviously, we know that Florida is a more lax state for the fact that they are home to WWE currently. They're home to the NBA bubble. They're home to the WNBA bubble, all that kind of stuff. So my question to you is, pandemic's over, or at least fans are allowed in stadiums at normal rates. Everything is back to a semblance of normalcy. WWE can run a show anywhere in the country, sell tickets like normal. Next year's WrestleMania, is it happening at SoFi Stadium?
No. I think it happens. I'm gonna say Las Vegas.
Based off of just nothing?
I'm just throwing it out there. I mean, it's a new stadium. I mean, I'm just proposing it at this point. I mean, realistically, I would say Tampa. But what I would do if I was Vince is you have this brand new stadium in Las Vegas where the Raiders are scheduled to play this year. Why wouldn't you try to do it in Vegas, baby? Vegas is one of the entertainment capitals of this planet, so to speak. So
I'll say this much. I don't think WWE never plans to hold it in Vegas. And the one thing that would really draw them to still being at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles is the fact that they love to do things before anybody else. And the fact that if they postpone LA for a year or two, things like the Super Bowl and full season football are all going to come and go through SoFi Stadium before WWE got to be like, we were one of the first, because technically right now, obviously with the plan of being football with no fans in attendance, I mean, it's realistically, if they stayed in LA and fans could be in attendance, they might be the first ever event at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles that welcomes fans. It might be the grand opening of that stadium, concession stands, merchandise booths, usher workers. They might be working their first ever event in that stadium. It might be WrestleMania. WWE opened up the United Center in 1994. They were the first official event to be held there before the Chicago Bulls or the Blackhawks even took the court in ice. So Vince kind of would probably love to have that, kind of moniker to him. It was supposed to be Taylor Swift opening up that stadium, and then it was supposed to be the Rams and the Chargers, but that's not happening. It didn't happen. So Vince would love that idea, but, obviously what I just said with Staples Center reserving that night. Now, I don't think that means WWE entirely won't run there. There are other arenas to have events. Obviously, down in Anaheim, you have the Honda Center, known as the Pond, where the Ducks play. I want to say you probably have some other arenas in the area that I'm not currently thinking about. I know you do have the Great Western Forum, in which I've been told I know it's a concert venue now. It's the Great Western Forum in LA right now is being treated a lot like the Nassau Coliseum in Nassau County, home of the Islanders back in the day, where they shrunk in the capacity down, and they're making it more of a concert venue, and that's what the one out in Inglewood is. But I've been told they might be reforming that to be the home of the Clippers. The Clippers are looking for a new home. They're looking to maybe get out of Staples Center. They've got some money. They've got some good teams. They maybe don't want to be the little brother to the LA Lakers anymore. So maybe if they can find a way to fit the Inglewood or the Great Western Forum or whatever, it's currently LA Live or whatever they currently call it, right next door to SoFi Stadium, literally. Maybe they move Raws and SmackDowns to there, which would probably be easier because, to be honest with you, getting 4 nights at Staples Center in the middle of March and April is probably a very tough thing to do already. I mean, I was actually surprised that they did it. I mean, obviously this is before the schedules for the Lakers and come out, but you got the Lakers, the Clippers, and the Kings all playing there. I mean, it's tough to get what they wanted Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. They wanted 4 straight nights there. So that's 4 straight nights of no Clippers, no Lakers, no Kings, pretty much in the middle of the season. They already did say that the Hall of Fame wasn't going to happen at the Staples Center. Maybe it's because of the fact that they probably couldn't get that extra night, or maybe it's because of the fact that Staples Center is a bigger arena, and the Hall of Fame has been drawing less and less as the years have gone on. So maybe they thought this would be a good time to move it to like a convention center, back to what they were doing when the Hall of Fame first started. I don't know if you remember, but when the Hall of Fame first started in like 04, 05, 06, they were doing it from like theaters in those cities. I remember when I went to Detroit for WrestleMania, it was at the Fox Theater. But now, and they tried to push it to arenas, but I feel like the ticket sales in the arenas are actually pretty low. The only reason I'm really be able to afford the Hall of Fame is because they're in arenas and because there's so many seats. They draw it down to like $15 a ticket. When it was like at the theater at Madison Square Garden, underneath the Garden before WrestleMania 20, and only having 22,000 capacity, drew up the tickets to hundreds of dollars, and it made it more of a black tie event. More of the fans that went were some of the fans who dressed up, looked nice, maybe weren't the average family of 4, I guess, going to the Hall of Fame ceremony. And I think WWE, if anything, should probably try to go back to that. If they're in LA, try to go to a theater or maybe like the Kodak Theater where they have the Grammys or any of these places to bring it back to that prestige. But yeah, I would probably, if I was a betting man, I would probably say Tampa is hosting WrestleMania next year. Yeah. When will they make the announcement? Probably after all this is said and done, because there's no real reason to make any announcement about next year's WrestleMania or when because tickets would go on sale in about 2 months for WrestleMania in a typical year. I don't think they're going to go on sale in 2 months this year. We don't even know where Survivor Series is going to be. We don't even know where Royal Rumble is going to be. So normally Royal Rumble travel packages would have already gone on sale by now. Yeah. And we don't know where it's going to be.
I'll say this. We can do a hashtag for it. Bring WrestleMania to Vegas. I would love it.
I would love it in Las Vegas. Personally, I'm a big Las Vegas fan. I go there as much as I can. I will say the one thing that I don't know if it's as important as it was a couple of years ago, but the one thing I could definitely say about Las Vegas that might still be an issue with WWE is the Las Vegas mantra. It's not really a family-friendly city. Obviously, things like Knights coming in there, the Raiders coming in there, I think that's changing things around a little bit. Yeah. The reason WrestleMania 9 was there is because that was literally in Las Vegas's time when they were rebranding themselves as a family-friendly destination. They were building amusement parks in the casinos. They were building more like water parks and kids-themed shows. And that's why WrestleMania went there, to kind of be a part of that rebranding of Las Vegas. Obviously, that didn't work out. Las Vegas went back to being an adults-only kind of place, and WWE hasn't had a WrestleMania there since. But also, Las Vegas never really had the proper venue to have a WrestleMania until now. So I could see WrestleMania definitely going there. It's not off the table. I don't see it in the next 2 years. I think if they don't go to LA this year, it'll be next year. And the only reason they'll go to Tampa is because they essentially still owe Tampa a WrestleMania. And I would love to see it. I do hope they do change up the logo a little bit. We're not just reusing last year's WrestleMania logo. But I'd be curious because I want to see that theme. I want to see that same pirate theme, but I don't want it to be just the literal exact same merchandise and stuff all over again. So moving on. So Roman Reigns is your new Universal Champion. Tonight on SmackDown, as we're filming this, it's Baron Corbin, Matt Riddle, Big E, and there's a name I'm missing, but either way, it's a fatal four-way match to decide who faces Roman Reigns for the championship. Since Roman Reigns' is heel turn, have you been a fan?
I've been a massive fan of this. I mean, I've been a fan of his all along. We've talked about this on episodes way back in the beginning when we started doing this a few years back. This heel turn was needed. It was great for Roman Reigns. I am so happy that he's aligned with the Paul Heyman, the guy. He is the mouthpiece. And I think I think it's a great way to bring him back after his layoff due to COVID. I think it's fantastic. I love this edge to him. I think it's going to make him. It's gonna make him, I think more popular with some of the other fans that don't care for him so much, because him as a heel, we haven't seen it really. So I mean, we've seen he was a bad guy, but it wasn't like it was like him in the Shield. I mean, they were bad guys, but the people loved him. He's a full-on heel, and I think it's absolutely fantastic. I hope he has a deep run with the title. Again, we were not surprised that he won on Sunday, but again, glad he's back. Glad he's got the title. And I'm
not surprised at all. Obviously, Braun Strowman was the one who took the fall, like we expected. Yeah. One thing I'll say, Payback was a decent pay-per-view, but the one thing that I guess I don't understand is there was a lot of people missing from the SummerSlam card, and in a lot of people's eyes, they thought Payback was just supposed to be SummerSlam 2 and just feature the people that were missing. But for the most part, we got a lot of rematches, and it doesn't make any sense to have back-to-back weeks of pay-per-views, yet Jeff Hardy, your Intercontinental Champion, or Sami Zayn, who has come back and trying to fight that he still has the Intercontinental Championship. That feud saw nothing, no further movement at Payback. So 2 pay-per-views in a row, the Intercontinental title not involved. 2 pay-per-views in a row, Shinsuke Nakamura and Cesaro, your SmackDown Tag Team Champions, not involved. So that was my gripe with Payback. We saw more Bayley, we saw more Sasha, we saw more Dominic, we saw more Seth, we saw more Roman Reigns, we saw more Randy Orton, and I guess my thing was, what was the kind of point of this? You have people who did miss out on SummerSlam, so Payback could have felt like a completely different pay-per-view. You could have had literally no one that was involved at SummerSlam. It'd be an entirely full pay-per-view of the belts and the feuds that weren't mentioned at SummerSlam, and then maybe the championship match. But yeah, for the most part, the pay-per-view was just rematches from SummerSlam, and people like Jeff Hardy and their storyline going with AJ Styles and Sami Zayn, that's completely left off WWE TV for 2 pay-per-views in a row. If you were to tell the Intercontinental Champion of any generation, we're having a 4-hour pay-per-view, the biggest one of the year, SummerSlam. Some of you are not going to make it, but next week we're having another 3-hour pay-per-view, 1 week from the pay-per-view to traditional pay-per-views. They're going to pay another $54.99. They would assume that they're going to be on at least one of those cards. So to be completely left off, since Cesaro and Shinsuke Nakamura, I completely forget that they're tag team champions because I really just watch mostly pay-per-views and a little TV here and there. And, well, I just watched 6 hours of pay-per-view and they were nowhere to be seen, not even on the pre-show.
Yeah, I'll say this. I think it's a bad move by WWE to not have those championship holders on the card, whether it's having them on Payback or SummerSlam. I think it's just a bad move. You did mention AJ Styles. I do, before we finish up, I want to mention AJ Styles and The Rock. Both those guys had COVID, and they're doing well, which is why AJ was out for a little while with his injury. He was taking care of COVID, and The Rock the same way. Real quick, what your thoughts on that?
I feel that those guys are very well in physical shape.
Yeah.
I don't, people say prayers out to The Rock's family. I don't think that's necessary. I think The Rock and his family are probably, maybe he's got a newborn. Maybe that's a little bit of an issue. But as for The Rock himself and the rest of his family, I think they're in tip-top shape. And I don't think it probably slowed down The Rock even one little bit.
Not a chance.
So moving on, we'll talk now back to NXT a little bit. And the past couple of weeks, a voice from NXT has been noticed to be missing, and it's been confirmed, like AOP that was announced today, being released from WWE. Mauro Ranallo, his time in WWE, again, is done. This one seemed a little more mutual than the Authors of Pain, who were just released earlier today in WWE. Mauro Ranallo seems like he went mutually with WWE to part ways. I know you're a big Mauro Ranallo fan. Are you happy? Are you sad to see him go? Because personally, I'll start with me. I'm not happy to see him go, but I feel that, he's a little inconsistent when it comes to wanting to be there, whether that's personal reasons or not. I think it's probably best for Mauro Ranallo to not be involved with WWE. Maybe go back, do the schedule you want to do with mixed martial arts and other things. He's a great voice, but again, the inconsistency and it just seemed like, it's probably better for WWE and Mauro Ranallo to part their ways.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I really like Morrow. I think he's a great talent. He's got a great voice. Anything he does is money. He has great catchphrases. He's textbook. He's just really good. But I agree. I mean, with his demons that he has, with his depression issues, I believe is what he has. I know he's had his personal issues, going on. So it's a battle he's probably never, it's a battle he's going to deal with the rest of his life. So obviously, I wish him the best. Hope he does well, and I think Bellator is going to do fine with Mauro Ranallo, full time over there. And maybe, who knows? Maybe we'll see Mauro Ranallo in a couple of years. Maybe he'll do a guest appearance and do a guest commentary, something like that.
So we're going to finish out the show talking AEW's All Out. I'm going to personally say it. This pay-per-view of all the AEW pay-per-views, I feel like I have the least enthusiasm for. It's not, I don't really want to say it's negative to the storylines or anything like that. It just, I don't know, I just feel like the build-up's been okay. It's kind of just slipped in there. Obviously, it happens every single year, but with no fans in attendance, some of these pay-per-views kind of slip in there. With WWE, we're more used to the pay-per-views being on a monthly basis. We expect them, but with AEW, they kind of come more infrequently. So the fact that All In just kind of snuck up on us, well, it did indeed. That just kind of snuck up on us, and I kind of feel some of the juice for it, for myself at least. I've definitely been more excited for AEW pay-per-views in the past.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm not that excited about it. Honestly, I probably will not be able to watch it. I got some things going on this weekend with the holiday and everything. So I'll catch the highlights another day. I'm not that excited about it either. I'll catch it out. I'll catch it later and see how it is, and just so we know what's going on and go from there. I'm with you. I don't know. I'm not really feeling it.
I am looking forward to Sammy Guevara and Matt Hardy in a broken rules match. If Hardy loses, he's going to leave AEW. So is that telling you that Matt Hardy's going to win this?
Yeah. I don't see why not. I think Matt's perfect for AEW, and I don't see him leaving just yet. He just got there.
Another match on the card, Britt Baker versus Big Swole in a tooth and nail match. I'm kind of curious to see Britt Baker in action. Obviously, we haven't seen her in a while. She's got this little gimmick going where they wheel her out and she's like in charge, and so it's going to be kind of curious to see. I've seen her wrestle before, but it's been a little bit. So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing Britt Baker wrestle. Some other notables on the card. It's the Tag Team Championships on the line. Kenny Omega and Adam Page against FTR. Do you see FTR leaving with the Tag Team Championships after All Out?
Yes, I think that's the one highlight of the show. If FTR wins, I think that's going to be the main highlight of the night. I think they're going to get it. I think it's time for Kenny to go full heel turn and turn on Page, and FTR wins.
Chris Jericho against Orange Cassidy in a Mimosa Mayhem match. You can win by pinfall submission or being thrown into a tank full of mimosa. I feel like this mimosa storyline. I feel like, great competitors, like to see them fight. I just feel this storyline that they got going with the mimosa thing. I'm not really buying it.
I love Chris Jericho. I love Orange Cassidy, but this whole storyline, this whole gimmick, this whole match, I just think it's stupid. I'm ready to move on from it.
Some other matches. AEW is going to crown a women's champion this week. Hiroka Shida against Thunder Rosa. That is the match. Hiroka Shida is a current champion. She defends against Thunder Rosa. And obviously the main event match, one you should be looking forward to a little bit because MJF, he is going against Jon Moxley for the AEW Championship. He's been a huge MJF fan for a long time. But is he leaving All Out with the championship? Or is Jon Moxley retaining?
I think MJF gets his first loss. The first time he actually gets. I know he's lost matches, but he actually gets tapped out or submitted. I think they're going to keep the title on Mox. I really do.
Yeah, kind of the same thing going like in WWE. I think you want to bring fans back with Jon Moxley as champion. You kind of want to keep him as the champion until fans come back. Obviously, they've got fans. They're sold out for All Out with their 15% capacity. But until you can start traveling, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, I agree.
So with that being said, All Out this weekend. I'll be watching it, not live, probably on tape delay a couple hours later or the next day. But Either way, I'll watch All Out. We got, obviously, to talk about who's the number one contender for the Universal Championship next week. That's being decided tonight on SmackDown. What's going to come up this week on Raw, and anything else in the world of WWE. In the coronavirus times, you never know what to expect a week from now.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what happens, and we'll be talking about it plenty next week.
All right, so for this week's edition of the Heel to Face podcast, for Brandon the Iceberg and Clements, for myself, Ed K-Rock, Jared, this has been the Heel to Face podcast. We will talk to you next week.